In theaters now from director Kenneth Branagh, director and star Kenneth Branagh, is A Haunting in Venice. This is the third in Branagh's series of Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot adaptations of classic mystery stories starring the world's favorite, interestingly mustached Belgian detective. Now, I had seen all of these as they've come out in the theaters. I'd seen some of the earlier versions too. These are not, at least in terms of the previous two films, Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile. This is, as my mother would say, the umpteenth version of those films. Stories have been told a few times on film, but I don't recall this story. This Haunting in Venice was based on a story called Halloween Party by Agatha Christie, which I had never read, story or book. So it was fresh to me, which was great. It was just, I had no idea where it was going to go. I'd seen the previous two films and I thought they were okay. Great cast, nicely shot, but something about them just didn't quite click for me. Something about them was a little off. They were a little too grandiose in their visuals for me. They used a lot of CGI to create these swirling cameras around mountaintops in the Nile, and it always just seemed kind of weird and kind of fakey to me. And the casts didn't always thrill me. I think I like this one the best. I think A Haunting in Venice, for my sensibilities, for my lifestyle, worked the best for me. It's really more or less a horror movie. It starts off. I'll give you some of the story, but I'm certainly not gonna ruin the mystery here. Hercule Poirot, since the events, these are all done linearly as they are released. He is living in Venice since the events of the last film. He's retired. He's living his fastidious and very particular life. He has a beefy, what do you want to call it? A beefy bodyguard to make sure all the line of people that stand outside the house he lives in who want him to help solve cases and solve their problems. He's got a beefy guy to keep them at bay because he's out of the game. Poirot's out of the game. Definitely never going to do it again until Tina Fey shows up in the form of, or until a female American mystery writer in the form of Tina Fey shows up and says, there's some psychic medium and she seems really legitimate and I really would like you to help me figure out if she's real or not. And he goes off with Tina Fey to this decaying chalet in Venice. Did I mention it takes place in Venice? It's called A Haunting in Venice. They go to this decaying chalet in Venice, owned by this sad woman who's living alone. Her daughter died there accidentally, and the tales of this place is that it was once a children's hospital where the doctors were like, we're tired of treating all these kids. We're just going to lock them in the basement and just sort of go on our merry way. And so it's legendarily haunted. And did that haunting have something to do with this little girl's death? And is the little girl's spirit haunting the place? So there's a Halloween party, the titular, in terms of the original story, Halloween party with a bunch of kids and all that's going on. And then after that, the adults come in and we have our all-star cast assembled for the story that gets underway, which is a seance led by Michelle Yeoh to say, is this haunted? And let's have the spirit of the little girl talk to the mother. And then things just get weird. And it's really interestingly done. Very creepily conveyed, this film. Interesting, like, camera angles and camera tricks. A lot of, like, super wide angle or fisheye lenses that distort the edges of the frame and interestingly shot. You really feel like you're there. It's a very immersive feeling that you're in this old decaying house on the water in Venice. And I thought it was really well done. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I certainly liked it the most of the three. It held my interest throughout. I never really saw where it was going. Like any good mystery story, it's done well enough so that you can almost suspect anybody could be the culprit at any time. Interesting cast of very familiar, semi-familiar, and unfamiliar faces. One of the faces I was happy to see, and I'm going to mangle names, or I mangle names, but I usually forget names too. The woman who plays the mother is very familiar, and her name I don't recall. And the little boy who was the little boy who essentially played the young Kenneth Branagh in Belfast, which was a great movie, is also in this as a slightly less little boy, and that's kind of cool. So it's well done. It's a good whodunit mystery. It's a good creeper. Like, even if you think those Branagh Poirot films are boring, I want something with a little edge. I want something that'll make the hair stand up on the back of my neck. This movie's pretty good at that. This is really well done. So released probably a little bit too early, honestly. This would have been a much better mid-October release because it's about a Halloween party and it's about ghosts and murder and all that. And in the end, another little interesting thing too, the dynamic between Tina Fey and Kenneth Branagh at times. She, the probably kind of sort of vaguely based on Agatha Christie herself character, who has apparently written novels based on the adventures of Poirot, but she changed the name to, she tarted it up, but it was based on his cases. They have this interplay that feels a little bit like Nick and Nora Charles at times. It's a little bit of bickery, or him being kind of aloof and self-assured and her being a little bit snide and all-knowing, and it feels like it got the little sense of the Thin Man every once in a while, which was kind of cool. So in theaters now, for the time being, as I say this, probably if you watch this in a little while, it's already streaming or on video. See it however you can, because I thought it was pretty good. A Haunting in Venice.